When you hear a statistic say that the average American brushes their teeth 1.02 times a day, ask yourself, how could they have figured it out? Does it make sense that it could have been researched effectively? In this case, they would have had to ask, and don't you think it's a safe assumption that people lied? Neil, how are you doing this fine afternoon?
Good. I have my mushroom coffee, so I'm definitely ready for a entertaining episode.
Ooh, yes.
Well, as soon as the caffeine kicks in.
Well, the great thing about mushroom coffee is that it really makes you think.
You couldn't resist.
I know it's a little early in the episode for making these jokes. But
anyway,
the
book we were covering.
Yeah, if you can't tell from your podcast player, the book we're covering today is How to Lie with Statistics by Darrell Huff. And we've probably mentioned this at least 4, 5, 6 times in other episodes. And so it seemed like it was time to go ahead and do it.
Yeah, this was a fun book to read. I hadn't read it until you had mentioned it, I think, on a few of the other episodes. And I'm surprised it took me so long to actually read this book.
Yeah, it's a great little like pocket guide to not getting fooled by stupid numbers, right? And yeah. I feel like I don't directly acknowledge it in that I've read and reread my summary notes from this so many times that I've kind of internalized so many of the ideas, and I probably use them almost every day, right? Because someone will say something and relating to a statistic, and my immediate reaction will be like, yeah, like you can also look at it this way, or how did they get that number, or what are we not seeing? And it's really useful for not getting tricked by data, especially since people, I think, rely on data for so much of their thinking now, and will easily let their opinion be swayed by a nice use of statistics in an article or a blog post or whatever. So it's a very, very practical book.
Yeah, it gives it the air of truth.
Exactly.
Right. And when you put a stat in front of something, but there's so many ways, as we'll get into, so many ways to game a stat that it kind of makes you not trust any stat you look at. You have to almost dig deeper into, well, how did they get that sample? Or, are they cherry picking the dates that the sample starts from and ends at? That's a pretty common one. But yeah, there's so many different ways people can game a data set to make it say what they want it to say.
Exactly.
Yeah, it sort of forces you to, I think internalizing these rules is probably, serves you well. And I think I need to do that. And I also find that a lot of the things that were talked about in this, they're talked about in Taleb's work as well, but probably this is much more of like the fundamentals, right? And I actually wish I read, going back to Taleb after reading this might be more interesting, especially like Fooled by Randomness.
Yeah, I was going to say Fooled by Randomness and this have a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
Very similar themes, very similar problems they're dealing with.
Yep, definitely. And the other thing we should mention is this is not a new book.
Yeah, it's old.
When did it come out? It's from the 30s or 40s or something.
Oh, is it that old? I was thinking 60s, but...
Oh, maybe 60s. I could be wrong. Yeah, it's probably the 60s or something. Let me see. This is where we need our Jamie. I know I say that every time, but...
54. It was right in between our two guesses. Huh. It's only got a 3.9 on Goodreads. That seems low.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where you probably can't trust the Goodreads reviews.
Yeah, good point. How did they get that number?
Exactly. Or no, probably some people were like, that book was too short. I was expecting something longer. Or, yeah, there's all sorts of like stupid reasons people give reviews for different things.
Yeah, true.
If you ever actually look at even like restaurant reviews, some of the reasons are hilarious. Like they'll be like, oh, this place had no parking. The food was great, but it's like you gave it a 1-star review.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's no context.
That's my thing with fancy restaurants, is that sometimes a lower review is better because people will review it poorly because they wouldn't accommodate their special requests. And I respect that in a good restaurant, where they say like, no, and those kinds of things will get you bad reviews, but it actually means that it's a better restaurant.
Yeah. That's why, like, I don't know, it's hard to trust online reviews in general, but yeah. I saw 93% of Google Books reviewers like the book.
Yeah. Well, and those metrics are better anyway, because binary metrics end up being more accurate, I think, like thumbs up, thumbs down. In the long run, those types of reviews apparently are a better system than like 1 through 5 ratings.
I would agree with that, because there are books that, like, if I go think about how I rate books on Goodreads, because like I do use Goodreads, and I think like I probably give almost every book a 4 or a 5 because I rate it right when I finish it. But then there's
Yeah.
definitely books where you think about it, 3 months later and you're like, that book was like half bullshit. Or like, I didn't actually learn anything new in that book, but it felt really good to read it. Right. And
Yeah.
you just get biased by that. But you're not going to like go back and change your review. Right. So,
Well, yeah, I struggle with that a lot because I list all of my notes and reviews on my site.
oh, yeah, you put a rating on there.
Yeah, and I put a 1 through 10 rating on it, and it seems like I'm always trying to give a book like a 7 or an 8. And I have to I heard this rule somewhere. I don't remember where I heard it, but the rule was basically that when you're rating something 1 through 10, you can't use 7 because 7 is sort of the go-to, like, oh yeah, it's fine, right? But when you say no, you can't use 7. If you want to use 7, you have to go 6 or 8. That is much harder because an 8 is like a fairly strong endorsement and a 6 is like a fairly weak endorsement. So I like that rule.
That reminds me of like most of my Goodreads reviews are 4 stars, which is I think the same thing.
Yeah.
Because it's like if I didn't like it or if I was like meh on it, right, I should say 3. And if I really liked it, it could be 5. And if I hated it, 1, right? So having those 3 different areas makes sense. But 4 is kind of like a kind of like you're sort of punting on making a decision.
Yep. It's like, oh yeah, it was fine.
Yeah, it was fine. It was fine. It was okay.
But then on Amazon reviews too, I'm usually more interested in a book if it's got like a 4, right? Because if it's a popular-ish book that has a 4, it's probably really good and just controversial.
Yep.
But if it's got 4.8, that's usually a bad sign. It's like, it's probably going to be like stupid, feel good, pump up shit, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's one of those books that everyone's going to feel good right after they've read, so they're going to rate it highly.
Yeah. It's like, what's that book? You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero.
Oh, I've heard of that. I haven't read it, but
I started reading part of it. It's literally like the worst book I've ever opened in my life. It is remarkably terrible. But it's got, a 4.6 on Amazon and a 4 on Goodreads.
Damn.
So they're just wrong. That's the gist of it.
Or we're like the weirdos in society, which is also likely.
Okay, you know what? We're no longer in our warm up. We should actually get into the book.
Yes.
we recorded like a 25-minute off topic bonus material before this, and I think we're still in the mode of just talking.
Yes.
And hanging out. So we should actually hop in.
Yep.
So the cool thing about how this book is organized is that he breaks it out into 6 chapters that each go over a way that statistics are used or manipulated to make you think something or to warp your interpretation of the information. And then in the final chapter, he goes through kind of how to talk back to a statistic. So what to say when you're presented with a statistic and how to think about it.
Yep. In a way, it's not unlike influence, right? It's not unlike influence.
Yeah.
Which we covered.
Very similar layout.
Yeah.
He must have been inspired by this layout, or it's just a strange overlap, because you're right, they are uncannily similar in how they're laid out.
Yeah. So I guess diving right in, right? The first thing he starts with is bias samples. So, as it probably you already understand, if you pick a sample that is, not representative, your results are not going to be representative. But it's very interesting. A lot of the, the examples that he gave and how he breaks it down, it's one of the most commonly used techniques. And I know this is at the end of the chapter, but I love this example where the psychiatrist who says that practically everyone is neurotic. It's because everyone the psychiatrist is seeing is neurotic, because that's why they're going to a psychiatrist. So that's kind of like, a very simple example, right, of a bias sample, but kind of gets the point across very effectively.
Well, and the place we see this so much right now, I feel like, is in the news, right? So I saw this example the other day, which is a particularly blatant version of it, right? And I think that on some level, everyone knows what's going on when they see this. But have you seen the videos of people who can't find stuff on a map?
No.
Where it's like Jimmy Fallon or someone is out on the street in New York City and he's got a map on an art easel and he's asking people on the street like, hey, can you, point out where is Australia or something? And then you've got all these people being like, oh, I don't know. And they're like pointing to Russia, right? Or they're pointing to Africa, or they'll put up the map and they'll say, can you name like one country? And then somebody will say, well, Africa. And they'll point to, it's like, that's a continent. Ha, ha, ha. Right. And so the joke is like, wow, Americans are so stupid. They can't name any countries on the map. But really, they're just picking the people who, who did happen to fail, and they left out the footage of everyone who was like, yeah, like here's Greenland, right? Or there's also the element of if Jimmy Fallon came up to you on the street and said, like, hey, can you point out a country on the map? Like, I would be a little taken aback by that. I'd be like, holy shit, I'm talking to Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of silly data because it's so horribly biased that it's not actually telling you anything.
Right, exactly. I guess what they're trying to show in that video is, oh, look how dumb New Yorkers are. Look how dumb, right? I'm guessing that's the point.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't actually show you anything.
Or I also like the example of, well, and pretty much anything about, I would say, Trump voters in the more liberal media, where they'll play a clip of some usually kind of like overweight, unattractive white person from middle America wearing a MAGA hat, like saying something incredibly stupid.
Yep.
And the message there is like, oh, this is what a Republican looks like. Like,
right.
This is a Trump supporter, right? And like, no, you just picked the worst example that you could find for sampling this data.
One of my other examples I like to point to is like for Middle Eastern people, like if you actually meet somebody from like most Middle Eastern countries. I've never met anybody actually from Saudi Arabia, so that's the exception. But if you look at what Middle Eastern people are represented on CNN or something, right? It's like always at some protest where they're burning an American flag.
Yeah.
Or like throwing rocks at like an Israeli soldier, or just something like that, right? So if that was your entire exposure of what Middle Eastern people are like, you probably think that's like what they are, right? But then if you meet some of that, or, pretty much any of them, minus this very small minority of people, that's not at all what they're like.
Yeah.
But it's just a biased sample. It's exactly the same tactic. And you're right. The media is probably the most blatant users of this tactic.
Well, there's also more like subtle ways that you'll see this. And let me just make sure I'm not diving into one of the other things. No, I think this counts. So I don't know if you saw this. It was sometime earlier this year that somebody released this chart that said it was basically like more people were killed in schools in America than were killed as military people overseas, right? So there were more deaths from school shootings than there were deaths in deployed military personnel so far this year, which is like a really bad thing, obviously. But then they went on to say that you're more likely to die going to school in the US than you are likely to die like serving in the military. And that's where it's like, whoa, okay. Like those are two very different statistics, right? But you kind of like, actually, you know what? This is related to one of the later ones, right? But you, by presenting it one way, you kind of like provoke the other interpretation.
Right. You're using it to tell a story. And I think that's one thing that he cautions throughout the entire book.
Yeah.
Is that's why you just have to be cautious because everyone's using these statistics with an agenda. It's not necessarily like when we hear statistic, we assume it's like it's real, right? There's not a bias behind that. But then as you dive deeper, and especially everything he calls out in this book, there's a way to frame the statistics in a way that serves your agenda, whichever agenda you're trying to serve, right? There's a way to do it.
Yeah.
Well, think about like for even bias samples, right? I think this would fall under bias samples where or maybe it's one of the later ones. I was going to say where you cherry pick like the years or that's something later, right? What's that one called?
That's kind of like discarded data.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll get to that one.
One that was another really good example with bias samples though, is like the television polls, right? Or the polls for president or any politics.
Yo, that's exactly what I was going to bring up next. Go for it.
Well, yeah, it's the idea that I don't know about you. I was never polled for 2016 and neither was anybody I know.
Yeah, I don't know anybody who has ever responded to a Gallup poll, right? Like,
exactly.
Who are they polling? Right? Probably the type of people who sit around at home in their underwear all day and pick up the phone from unknown numbers, right?
That's exactly what my dad was saying. He said that even if they called our house, we never pick up our house phone. Really? Yeah. So, especially if it's not a number we recognize, like there's no way. It's probably a sales call, right? So we're not picking it up. So that's what he was wondering too. We got into a conversation about it off this book, and we were like, who are the people who are actually responding to these polls?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, reasons like that are the reason why the media can be so surprised by, something like 2016.
Oh, definitely.
I think, in my opinion, at least.
Well, and also when you hear a statistic like, 45% of Americans don't believe in evolution, right? I'm sure that it is a disturbing percentage, but it's really that 45% of people who respond to polls are, don't believe in evolution. And when you think about who is responding to this stuff, it probably slants a lot older and a lot lower income.
Right. So it's not a representative sample.
Yeah, it's not a representative sample at all. So
yeah, I mean, I was thinking, especially if a lot of these polls are done via phone, like I don't pick up unknown numbers. I don't even pick up like a lot of the numbers I do know. You know?
Oh yeah, if it's a known number and I'm working on something, right, I'll just ignore it and text them and be like, "What's up?" Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like I got stuff to do.
Whereas I guess if they did an online poll, that would be also not a representative sample because it would probably skew younger.
Yeah.
It would skew people who are using the internet. It's just it's hard to get a representative sample, and I think that's the other point he was trying to make is it's really hard to authentically get a representative sample, even if you're trying to.
Yeah, pretty much all samples will be biased
in some way or another. And I guess the key is knowing what is the bias in your sample.
Yeah.
So then you can kind of correct your interpretation for that, or at least call it out.
Well, and sometimes it's ridiculous too, where you'll see Fox and Friends run a Twitter poll and then say like, see, 75% of Americans think Hillary Clinton should go to jail. It's like,
right.
No. 75% of people who follow Fox and Friends on Twitter.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And they always say Americans.
Yeah, always say Americans.
75% of Americans. It's on Twitter. How do you even know they're American?
Yeah, you don't get data on who responded to your poll.
Yeah.
Probably like at least half Russian trolls.
Right.
Well, there was the one thing where it was like Fox and Friends tweeted something during the 2016 election that said, Bernie Sanders wants to spend $36 trillion giving all Americans free health care. Do you think we should spend $36 trillion on that? But it ended up being like 75% said yes. It's like, oh, shit. Okay.
That's a case of, I guess, not knowing your audience.
Yeah, exactly.
Because their audience is probably like skews older and was probably like, you know what? Sounds like a great thing to spend money on.
Well, it probably also skews, and this is going to sound really bad as soon as it comes out of my mouth, but opioid epidemic, right?
Right.
Like I'm stereotyping hard here, but I can imagine that a lot of the people who want a better healthcare system are the ones who've been like seriously fucked by it.
Yeah, or people they know have been.
Yeah, or people they know. And a lot of people who've been seriously fucked by it are probably the ones who then, have to spend a lot of time watching like TV because they can't do much else.
Yeah.
So
that's a very good point. There was another example I had that I lost. It'll come back to me. Did you have any others for that section?
No, I think the hard thing is actually that so many of them feed into each other.
Right.
So coming up with an example that doesn't steal steam from one of the later ones, but no, we can definitely go on to the next one. We'll keep hitting them as we go. So biased averages. And this is great because a lot of people miss that when somebody says the average, there's actually 3 different things that can mean. And usually it means the mean, which is adding up all of the values and dividing by the quantity of values. But average can also be the mode, which is the most common value, and it can also be the median, so the value in the middle of the sample.
Yeah, the biggest thing I took away from this, right, is that the fact that there are 3 different kinds of quote averages is that the term average doesn't actually mean a whole lot unless you know which type of average.
Yeah, you have to know which one they mean, especially because depending on the type of distribution, giving one or the other can make a huge difference, right? It's like the mean income in the US is, I think, 49 grand, which, doesn't sound too bad. But the median, right, the middle value is like 25 or 26, which is not great.
Right. So
if you were just looking at the mean, you'd be like, oh, cool, everyone's like making great money, has a fairly cushy lifestyle. That's not so bad. But, when you look at the median, it's like, whoa, okay, that's, half of the people in the country are making below 27K a year, right? That's not great.
And I think the biggest thing to call out, right, is that the mean is affected greatly by fat tails.
Yes.
Right. And so by fat tails, it's extremes on either end. So a mean would be greatly affected. Like if you were, let's say income's a really easy one. So a mean would be affected by a single person making $1 billion. Right, a year would make a huge difference to the mean, but it wouldn't really make a difference to the median.
Yeah. It's like that joke, what happens when Bill Gates walks into a bar?
Oh, what is that joke?
Everyone's average income goes up by $1 billion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the one that Taleb always uses, right, is never cross a river that's on average 4 feet deep.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good one too.
So yeah, that's yeah, because it basically means that that's just when you add up all the values and divide by the quantity of values, that's the number you get. But that could be greatly skewed. Like I think for income is a good one because obviously it's possible to make $1 billion. It's like one of the few cases where it's not really possible for like a person to be 1 billion feet tall.
Right.
So for average height, talking about the mean is probably pretty useful, right? Like I would say that in a non
Well, that's the thing is in normal distributions, the mean is fine, right? Because everything's going to be within a reasonable bound. But
yeah, like grades are another one. It's a 0 to 100 scale.
Yeah, in more power law situations, then you probably have to go with the median because that gives you a better sense of where other people are falling.
Right, and that was I think in the war on normal people, right? When he was giving, his average American, that was the medians that he was using, right?
Yeah, he was using median.
Yeah, because that was like that was the median income and the median education level.
Right. Well, and I guess for education, you can probably use mean.
Yeah.
Because it's not like somebody's going to have 1 billion degrees, right?
Right.
They might have 4 or 5, right? They could have like an MD, PhD, but that's basically the peak. It's hard to go too much higher than that, assuming we're discounting honorary degrees.
Right.
But yeah, so when you hear average, right, you have to perk your ears up a little bit and say, well, what exactly is, or how are they calculating the average? Because it can mean very different things, right? Or another good example is like startups, right, saying they're like average daily active users or average daily revenue, right? Or something like that, or average revenue per user.
Yep.
Depending on how you're calculating that, it can be very deceptive, right? Because maybe you've got 1% of people doing all the activity, and then that makes the median super high, or that makes the mean super high, but the median could be fairly low, right?
Right. Well, and I was going to say that for startups, that's why I like, especially I would say the first 12 months of their business, I always actually ask the year-to-date revenue or like the revenue you've had up to now, as opposed to your monthly revenue, because it's very choppy.
Smart.
Right at that stage.
Yeah.
Because it could be like you might have a great month, you might get 40K, 50K in that given month. Then the next month you might get 10. That doesn't mean you lost 80% of your revenue. You just might have had like, one big sale in that one month that got you to that larger number. So sort of taking it, like averaging it out over, and I know I just used the word average, which I just said is a faulty thing to use, but taking like the mean, right, I think makes a lot more sense than saying like, what was your monthly revenue last month?
Yeah.
I think that's a little, well, maybe if they've been around long enough, right? And I guess that's different for every type of business, but if you've been around for like 18 months, yeah, probably, your last month is pretty indicative, unless you just had some type of weird event happen.
Right.
But yeah, it's, but there are definitely instances where the mean makes a lot of sense to take. And I think it might be situational for which thing that you need to look at.
Yeah. Well, and that's why this is useful, because if you've got the sensitivity to listen for it, right, or to know to ask, then I think you can get through where people might be trying to fool you with using the more deceptive version.
The example he gave in this chapter was hilarious too. The one about if somebody sells you on a house because of how high the income is in that neighborhood.
Oh yeah.
And then like 1 year later, they come around saying, like, protesting against a housing association cost increase, because they say, oh, the average income is, and it was like a number way lower than what they had told you when they sold you the house. He was just basically calling out that it's two different averages, and whoever the person was using it to their advantage.
Yeah.
What do you think the situation to use mode would be?
I was wondering that. I don't actually know a good reason to use it. Or like when would that be useful data exactly?
Right. That's right. I haven't found one that would be, but I'm sure there are.
Yeah, there must be a use case for it if it gets discussed at all. But I just have no idea what it is or what it would be.
I wonder if it's in situations where things are like in very discrete, like I'm thinking like almost like a multiple choice type of thing. Like you're either A, B, C, or D.
Oh, that would make sense. You're either 1, 2, 3, or 4.
Yeah.
And then if you have an average of like 2.5, that's not helpful. But if you know that everyone clustered around 2, that is kind of useful.
Right. Like it's like, how many times a day do you brush your teeth or something, right? And if it was like 2.2 times, right? It's like, well, that doesn't help me.
Yeah. So the mode is 2.
Yeah, and maybe that 2.2 gets biased by, someone who just brushes their teeth 20 times a day.
Right.
Right. But 19 out of 20 people, it's 2 times a day. Right. So it's maybe that's the use case.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now. Let's see. Makes sense for nominal data, not consisting of numerical values.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Right. So kind of like you said, for example, taking a this is a semi-racially charged example from Wikipedia, but okay. For example, taking a sample of Korean family names, one might find that Kim occurs more often than any other name. Then Kim would be the mode of the sample. In any voting system where a plurality determines victory, a single modal value determines the victor, while a multimodal outcome would require some tie-breaking procedure to take place. Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Makes sense. I can see how that'd be useful.
Learning something while doing the podcast. This is good.
Exactly. That's the best. Until we can afford a Jamie, we just have to do it ourselves.
I know, it's so hard. Wikipedia is so difficult.
I know, yeah. Good thing we have these magical information devices.
I know. Oh, was it? This is definitely a tangent, but I saw a tweet. I don't know if you retweeted it or somebody else I know was saying like huge plot hole in reality.
Oh yeah,
I love that. So this tweet was, and we'll try to link to it on the show notes page. But the tweet was huge plot hole in reality. We all walk around with magical information devices in our pocket, but most people are wrong all the time.
Yep. Well, I tweeted something related to that recently where, and I don't know if I mentioned this on the podcast before, but I was at that resort in Arizona, which is like super health conscious focused, and they've got lots of like yoga and massages, and they sell healing crystals in the spa and stuff like that. And then they have all of these seminars on like living a healthy life. And one of the seminars was on transitioning to a plant-based diet. And then somebody had gone to it and then had come to a dinner right afterwards. And she was going on about how like, oh, it's good to switch to a plant-based diet because there's no nutritional value in meat. And I was like, whoa, right? Like,
yeah.
It's like it would take you a few seconds to Google that on the way over here, right? And it seems like it was surprising to her where she was like, wow, like I didn't know this. All right.
That's shocking.
And to be fair, I think we all do that too.
Of course. Like in different domains. Yeah.
I'm not saying that any of us are immune to it. That was just the most salient example where I was like, it's, but it's a kind of a common myth, right? Despite being one that's fairly easy to disprove with like 10 seconds of Googling, right?
Right.
And that is actually a weird plot hole in reality, is that we all have that stuff that we just sort of adopt wholesale from people without Googling it.
Right.
And to be fair, I mean, Google gets stuff wrong too, right?
Oh, for sure. Well, you know better than anyone.
Yeah, Google doesn't get stuff wrong, but the top result on Google is not always accurate. That's probably the better way to put it.
Yeah, and I guess you know better than anyone. Like Google doesn't fact check every search result.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So
well, and even for stupid stuff like this is a very Sphinxy episode.
Ooh, that's in the bonus material. People need to be Patreon subscribers to hear that.
Yeah. If you want to hear us talking about the mysteries of the Sphinx and conspiracy theories, you should check out the bonus material on the Patreon. But this is a good example because there's something in the Wikipedia page that's basically like it's not taken seriously by archaeologists and is considered like bunk science or something. There's something really dismissive of it on Wikipedia. And it was funny because when I read it, I was like, psh, that's bullshit. It's not fake. And then I, caught myself obviously being like, oh, that's a very crony belief. But that is hard sometimes, right? Where American Medical Association is a good example where they basically say that like, oh, red meat causes cancer and heart disease and you should stay away from it. But if you can look through PubMed and look at all the longitudinal studies, like that's a very hard position to defend.
Right.
And most people aren't going to do that research, though. They're just going to go with the AMA. And that's where some of this stuff gets tricky.
Well, and it's hard to do that for everything, right? It's like at some point,
yeah,
like you do have a time limitation too. So you're just like, I have to believe this. And I think there's certain things we care more about or we're more likely to look up than other things. And also there's certain things we want to be true.
Yeah.
Like the Sphinx thing would be super cool if it's true. So part of me like hesitates to look up all the things probably debunking it.
Yeah, that and aquatic apes. I'm just like, nah, you're wrong. But no, that's definitely true.
Exactly. I like don't want to know that it's wrong.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's also an element of, or at least this is what I do, which is I just try to find sources where I can trust them, right? Like, so there's a guy, Ben Greenfield, who does a lot of fitness stuff, and I feel like I can trust, 80-90% of what he says, right? Or Peter T is an even better example, right?
Yeah.
Or Rhonda Patrick, right? Where if they say something, I'm like, all right, like, I just trust you, right? You clearly do an insane amount of research on this. You're super knowledgeable. Like, everything that I look up to fact check you has been right in the past. I'm just going to like trust you. But, when Joe Rogan has a random guest on who's talking about like, I don't know, the most recent guy who's saying like, oh, Obama's a war criminal, started like 5 wars, should be put in jail. Yeah, I'm not going to just buy that.
Right. You're not going to like just wholesale adopt the opinion without checking.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to kind of have standards for who you, trust and who you don't.
Right.
Well, and I think there's this tendency to like project authority, where if somebody has a certain amount of authority, we just kind of assume they know stuff about everything. And this is like the classic example of this is parents.
Yeah.
Right. Where it's like your parents are super knowledgeable in certain areas, but they're also humans and they're not knowledgeable about everything. Right. And that's probably why you like start to fight when you're a teenager, because you start to realize some of that.
That's a great example. I would say doctors is kind of another one.
Yeah, doctors is a perfect one.
Yeah, where it's like, oh, my doctor told me red meat is bad for me, so therefore I don't eat red meat, and neither should you. But, your doctor was probably in medical school like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and is not up to date, necessarily on the newest things.
Yeah, or professors, right?
Right.
Or even just like even smaller things like who was it? Robin Hanson, the guy who wrote Elephant in the Brain, which great episode. Everyone should check out. He was on Sam Harris's podcast, and they did a Q&A at the end, and someone asked about immigration. And I loved Robin's answer to it, because he went up and he said, first, he said, I'm going to give you an answer, but first, I don't like how as a society we've gotten to the point of thinking that everyone should have an opinion about everything, right? It's like, I'm not an immigration expert. Sam is not an immigration expert. It's not what either of us work on. Like, we're completely unqualified to be talking about this. We will if you let us, but, we're not really people you should be listening to on the subject. And I was like, oh, it's kind of a good point. It's like, what can you actually, or it's easy to believe somebody in one area and then immediately start trusting them in other ones as well.
Yeah, I think it's the danger of having like intellectual heroes, kind of.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, because it's like people. I mean, I've definitely seen this with. Obviously, we're big fans of Taleb, but he's not right about everything. Like,
yeah,
there's definitely times you see him on Twitter, and you're like, "What are you doing? Like, calm down."
Yeah, not right about everything, and not necessarily like an ideal model to follow.
Right, exactly. Like you can admire a part of someone's work, but not necessarily look to them for guidance on everything. Like I've seen that. I mean, recently there's definitely this like cult around Jordan Peterson, and both of us like him, but I wouldn't say again like there's no way all of his opinions are opinions that we agree with.
Yeah,
and that's fine, right? Like you don't have to have the same. You shouldn't have the same opinions as him. Just
weird. Or, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Oh, no, I was just going to say it is. I mean, I think we were going to say the same thing. It's like weird that we think that you should have the same opinions just because you like somebody.
Well, I was going to go the other direction with it too, which is that it's lazy to criticize someone for liking someone who has a bad viewpoint, right? So what's a good example of this? Like you could really like Jordan Peterson for his like self-improvement and Christianity stuff, but disagree with the gender pronoun stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so somebody could say like, oh, I really like Jordan Peterson, I really enjoyed his book. And then somebody else might say like, wow, you hate women and you think we should have enforced monogamy? It's like, that's a crazy like jump, but we do that all the time.
Right.
Right. Where if there's a single idea we dislike that we associate with one person, we'll end up projecting that one bad idea onto anyone who likes that person.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to bring the episode back to Trump, but that's something that we do with Trump all the time.
Oh yeah, that's a perfect example.
Yeah, like there's no way you could say 100% of his ideas are wrong. Like he does say things that, do make sense sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like if you hear somebody say that in the public sphere, the immediate response is like, oh, that person must be racist because they like Donald Trump.
Yeah.
It's like, no. That's not what they said.
They support like, treating women like shit or something like that.
Right.
They'll take the worst possible thing they can attach to him, and they'll assume that, oh, if somebody likes him, they must like everything about him.
Or not even if they like him, they agree with one of his viewpoints.
Yeah.
Like if you say like, I forget who I was getting a conversation with, but I think it was just like an offline conversation. It was with a friend, and we were talking about the tariffs, right? Mm-hmm. And like, I think like I'm in general almost pure capitalist and I like free markets, but on the other hand, I can also be vindictive, and I don't like when, countries play by different rules with each other. So like China has very different tariff rules than we have for China. And I said something like, oh yeah, I could see like why we would want to put tariffs on them, because it sort of sends a signal. It's like a signaling thing to the, other countries too.
Yeah.
To have like, similar trade agreements that we have with them, even if it hurts us in the short term. I wasn't saying like, yeah, this is like what I think we should do, but I said, I can see the logic of it. And the person, is a very anti-Trump person and got, a little offended. They were like, oh, I can't, like, so you think that he's doing a good job as president? I was like, whoa, how do we get there? Like,
yeah. That's one thing.
Yeah, I was like, no, I said I can see the logic of it. Yeah, I don't know. It's like, especially with Trump, I've noticed it really pushes people's buttons.
Yeah.
It's a really tough thing to get into a rational conversation about.
If you say you approve of anything that he has done, then you're immediately like a Nazi racist, white supremacist, right?
Yeah.
Heaven forbid you're a white person who say you like something that he did.
Yeah, exactly. You're screwed at that point. You might as well join the alt-right at that point.
I can't even wear red anymore. It really sucks. I saw something in the paper this morning that I don't know how much this is actually happening, but he's trying to get opioid manufacturers indicted, right? So like trying to go after them. And my immediate reaction was like, oh, that's like a great idea. That's a really good thing to do. And it was just kind of funny because it felt like
felt dirty.
Didn't feel dirty. I just felt like if I went out and said in public, like, oh, Trump did something awesome today, right? I would get in at least one fight.
Oh, yeah. If you tweeted that, like, that was the thing you tweeted when you woke up, it would be a very entertaining Twitter day for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Trump, for some reason, just, like, pushes people's buttons. Like, I know, I mean, I can see why, but, yeah, people get so riled up over it.
I think it's the new religion, man. Politics is the new religion.
Yeah.
You've got your team, and your team is right. The facts don't matter, right? If Trump says that he flew up to heaven on a winged horse and talked to God, that's what happened, right? Like,
yeah,
it's in the book. So you don't challenge, or you just go with what your party says, and you hate the other parties, and stone the adulterers, and like those are the rules now. It's not really about, I feel like, facts or reasonable discourse anymore. It's just about winning, right?
Right.
Or what's the term? Idea sports.
Idea what?
Idea sports.
Idea sports. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just the competition.
Well, the funniest thing is when parties flip ideas, right? When it's like the national debt is the best example that I can think of. But it's like when Republicans are in power, it's like not really about the debt anymore. But when Democrats are in power, Republicans won't stop talking about debt. And it's flipped the other way. Like right now, Democrats are talking about debt all the time.
Yeah.
And when it's their president in power, or when they're in power, I guess, in Congress or presidency, they just don't really care about that anymore. And so it's all about like, it's just talking points, right? And you just use it to further your team's effort.
That's a weird one, because there's not that much motivation to do anything about the debt when you're in power.
Right.
Because the only ways you affect the debt are if you decrease spending or increase taxes. And neither of those are going to be super popular things to do. So
exactly.
I mean, the only way you could do it is if you dramatically cut back government spending on, non-citizen related stuff, right?
What would that be?
Well, like, what did we spend $1 trillion and some dollars on getting that stupid jet from?
Oh, yeah.
Who was it? Lockheed Martin?
Lockheed Martin, yep.
Yeah, the one that just like leaks fuel and can't outmaneuver the old like 1960s jets. And
yeah.
Absolute piece of trash. And yeah, we spent $1 trillion on it, right? Like, that would literally be like UBI for, well, okay, a couple of months, but it would be something, right?
Yeah, but it's still just a colossal waste of money because at least you would get something out of that. Yeah.
Seriously.
No, that's the best example. Also, like I think you might have shared this article, or I came across an article that I read. There's like a long article about the history of that. Did you ever read that?
Yeah. Oh, that, I don't remember which of us shared it with the other. Maybe Adil sent it to us.
Maybe.
That's a crazy article. It's a crazy history.
Yeah, where, I mean, basically it was pitched as a single jet for, I think, 3 different branches of the military, right? It was like...
Yep. It was meant to replace the Navy, Army, and Air Force jets, I want to say.
Or was it Marine and Air Force? Yeah, Marine and
maybe
Air Force.
Marines, Army, and...
Or no, Marine, Navy, and Air Force, right?
Marine, Navy, and Air Force, something like that.
But it was 3 of them. And then,
yeah.
And then as the R&D went further along, they were like, oh yeah, actually now it's going to be 3 different versions, not 1. Because the idea behind having 1 is like, oh, you just have 1 set of replacement parts and only 1 set of maintenance codes to understand. And that was the pitch that they won on. And then that's the whole name, Joint Strike Fighter.
Yeah. So ridiculous.
And then at some point they were like, nope, we can't do the 1 anymore. We're going to have 3.
Well, and everyone kept like demanding more stuff from it too.
Yep.
So it had to like be VTOL and supersonic and have super tight maneuvering, just like stuff that doesn't combine well.
And hover and like,
yeah.
Wait, what's the one of the branches has one that hovers, but once it gets off the deck, I think it's the Navy one. Once it gets off the deck of the ship, it needs to be refueled in midair. At that point,
that's this jet.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's insane.
Yeah, it's the Navy one. You have to refuel it in air. It can do vertical takeoff, but then it needs to be refueled. This is like a separate fuel tank or something ridiculous.
Jeez.
It's something like it's a separate fuel tank, and because the plane has to expand and contract in order to support like supersonic flight, the fuel just leaks straight out of it when it's sitting on the ground or something.
Oh, and then there's like the heat resistant paint, right? Or like the thermal resistant paint that they have.
Yeah. What's the issue with that?
So it's like, okay, so the paint is like super, super expensive, number 1.
Right.
And then it's also very temperature sensitive. So it basically has to be repainted after every flight.
Oh, yeah.
And then the buildings that house the planes have to also be painted with that. And the trucks that move it have to also be painted with that.
Yeah. Good times.
Oh, we have to link to this article.
I know. It's a crazy history.
Yeah, we'll definitely put it in the show notes.
Yeah. If you told me that you were going to cut government spending to stupid shit like that, I would be very okay with it.
I think most people would be. If they knew the whole story of that, I feel like they would be.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of those where we could say 75% of Americans agree.
I mean, there's so much dumb military stuff. It's like whenever one branch gets put on an operation, all the other branches need to get on it too because they get FOMO.
Right, exactly.
And they get like pissed off that they weren't picked for it. And so we end up sending all these extra teams places just so that like nobody in the other branches gets their panties in a bunch. It's so stupid.
Yeah, then there's all these weird subsidies too. Like the ethanol subsidy is absurd.
Oh, yeah.
It's an insane subsidy. Like, I really don't understand why we still use that in our gasoline.
It's not a good investment. It takes more energy to create it than it saves.
Yeah. But I heard that no candidate wants to propose getting rid of that because it's Iowa. Iowa is like a huge corn state. And then Iowa was the first primary.
That was the primary. Damn.
Yep.
See, this is why we need a benevolent dictator. We need a philosopher king.
Exactly.
Can just come in, fix things, abdicate power. It'd be great.
You would need somebody who like just doesn't want to win a next term.
Yeah, someone who's just like, all right, fuck it. Yeah, dude, Bernie would be great. He won't survive for a second term. Like, yeah, he'll just be like, fuck it, guys. We're legalizing pot. We're getting rid of ethanol. Shutting down Guantanamo.
I think that was some people's hope with Trump, right? Was that like, oh, he just does not give a shit, right? So he's going to like do all this stuff. But then, I don't know. I think he really wants to win a second term.
Yeah.
Or something. Like, I don't know. He's not nearly as radical as people were expecting.
Yeah, I don't know. Now I've got this idea in my head of Bernie at like turning 90 with a joint in his mouth, middle fingers up, being like, fuck it, let's go.
That would actually be pretty cool. We should get him on this podcast.
That would be amazing. We'll be like, well, your competition came on the podcast, so.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
What if the first debate of the 2020 election was held on Made You Think between Andrew Yang and Bernie Sanders?
That would be fun. I would pay a lot for that debate.
That would be awesome.
I wouldn't even want to moderate. I just want to listen. I like Andrew a lot.
Yeah. Well, I feel like he would be good in a debate. I haven't heard him in a debate, but he seems to know his shit. So
yeah, well, and he's a very straight talker, which is great.
Which is rare in politics.
Yeah, but I feel like it's going to be necessary now.
Yeah.
All right. We got to get back to the book. Discarded data is the next one.
Oh, I love this one.
Yeah, this is basically, and it actually relates to what we started that long line of tangents with, which was the opioid thing, right?
Yep.
Companies will continue to run experiments until they get the results they want. So they'll discard experiments that fail to produce significant findings. And this is a huge problem because, you know, I think most people know that something's considered statistically significant if there's a less than 5% chance that it could have happened randomly, right? So for a research study to hold up and be published, it usually has to show that the results could not have happened by chance, right? A p-value of less than 0.05. But if you run 1,000 experiments and 999 of them fail to show significant results, but one of them does, then you haven't actually shown a significant result. You've actually exceeded the p-value, right? Because what all the p-value is saying is that this would only happen by chance 5 in 100 times. So
right, exactly.
If you run it 100 times, you're going to get significant results a few times. And that's how you end up, you know, with stuff like, what is it? I mean, Zoloft, some of those antidepressants, in most of the studies, they showed basically negligible impact compared to a placebo, but then also a lot of negative side effects.
Right.
But the only ones that got published and publicized were the few studies that showed net positive benefits. And I think, you know, now we're realizing it that antidepressants broadly prescribed are a net harm. But because that data was sort of suppressed, right, it was discarded, people didn't know that. And I think it's the same thing with ADHD meds, too.
Yeah, well, I was going to say this is harder to do in, I mean, it happens in medicine for sure, but it's harder to do in medicine than in things like cosmetics and food.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's not even any regulation on that, right? So I know for a fact cosmetics companies do this all the time, which I have definitely said in a previous episode, but in case people hadn't heard that one, very, very common thing is you start with a very skewed sample. So you'll start, let's say you're using like a skincare product and you're testing, you know, reduction of pimples or something, right? You start with like the most pimply people. And then there's obviously going to be regression to the, you know, to the normal with or without your medication. So you start with that, you have them apply the medication. If the results are not what you want, you can always redo it. Like there's nowhere that says you have to like actually use the results of that study. So you can always just start another study and be like, okay, hopefully this time the pimply people will get better using our product, right? Just keep doing it. And to your point, if you run 100 samples or 100 of those studies, like even if it's happening randomly, you will at least get 5, or you know, you'll likely at least get 1, right? That's showing statistical significance, even if it's not actually a efficacious product.
Yeah. Well, this is the big problem with big data too.
Yeah.
And part of why I'm just generally skeptical about most people who have like a hard on for big data stuff.
That's the best way to describe it. Hard on for big data stuff.
Just big throbbing data. If you have a big enough data set and you just start running associations between different variables in it, like you're going to come back with something.
Yeah.
There's no way you're not going to find some random stuff. And, you know, I feel like sometimes it'll get, you know, tossed out into the wilderness without people thinking seriously about whether or not they just randomly found that. I'm trying to think of a good example of this.
Oh, there's like Nicolas Cage movies and school shootings or something.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, those are the really funny ones where it's like ice cream and murders is another one, right? So as ice cream consumption goes up, so does the murder rate. And it's just because, you know, more people get killed in the summer, basically.
Yeah.
Or what was the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster? Oh, yeah. Climate change is reducing piratism. So as the globe has warmed from climate change, global piracy has decreased. Right. So it's like climate change is a good thing, actually, because it's killing all the pirates.
Okay, so it's not school shootings, by the way, for Nicolas Cage movies. It's
what was it?
Number of people who drowned by falling into a swimming pool.
Well, that one makes sense. I mean, you ever watched a Nicolas Cage movie?
That correlates with Nicolas Cage movies.
Well, the other thing that's important here is that really small samples will have much larger variance. So
Yep.
if you flip a coin 10 times, you might actually get 8 heads. It wouldn't be that insane, but you're much less likely to get 80 heads in 100 coin flips, right? So because the variance is smaller with smaller data sets, you're more likely to get a significant result just by chance because the variance is so much higher, which is why when you see these studies done on, 25 people, you kind of have to go, well, like that's not really telling us anything. I know this is a big issue with drug tests too, which is that most pharmaceutical tests are not done on women. So they won't take women for drug tests on humans because they're just afraid of damaging unborn children. And so drugs can get onto the market never having been tested on women before.
That sounds pretty messed up.
Yeah, right? That's like not a good situation to be in.
Well, that means the FDA is making an assumption that men's and women's biology is effectively the same, which we know is not true.
Right. Well, and for a lot of drugs, you can probably get away with it, but then I'm sure there are others that could have a terrible effect for, maybe they like interact worse or poorly with estrogen or something, right?
Right, exactly.
Or you're probably almost never testing interactions with birth control or things like that, and that's pretty bad too.
Yep. Yeah, I was just going to say that's the other thing that like the FDA does not do, a good job of looking at is drug interactions, like the second order effects.
Oh, yeah.
Because like they're not testing, as far as I know, right? Maybe they're testing like common interactions, but they're not testing like, oh, if this person is on like, these other 4 medications and then you add this 5th one, like what happens? That's like pretty important.
I feel like that should be in the final stage of trials, like test against the top 20, 50, whatever meds,
Yeah.
Give it to somebody who's also on statins and Lipitor and birth control and aspirin. And
well, I was going to say there's probably clusters too, right? There's probably problems that cluster. So you're probably, you're more likely to be taking those drugs concurrently.
Right.
And then honestly, they should probably test these things versus like other things as well. Like I know they probably test with alcohol because a lot of people drink, right? But I was going to say they should probably also test like how it could interact with opioids and, and marijuana, although I don't think there's a ton of interaction with marijuana, but opioids and, specifically because there's so many of those prescribed and then taken illegally too.
Yeah. Opioids would be a big one. And then there's another weird one, which is, what is it? Oh yeah. Grapefruit juice. Do you know about this?
Oh yeah. Well, okay. I don't know enough to like knowledgeably talk about it, but I feel like I've seen stuff about grapefruit juice and interactions.
Yeah, I think it's called the naranjin, which is like an active component in grapefruit juice, can actually intensify the effects of certain pharmaceuticals. And so there are cases, I'm fairly sure, of people like drinking a bunch of grapefruit juice and then taking a normal like level of, or, a high amount, but not what would have been a lethal amount of opioids and overdosing.
Wow.
Yeah. Let me just fact check myself right now, because I know it can increase the potency of drugs, but I think it's also killed people.
Yeah, I'm just looking at Wikipedia.
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah. There are literally stories of people overdosing from drinking grapefruit juice even after taking a drug.
Wow.
Yeah, it could be ingested hours after a pill, and you could still run the risk of, oxycodone potentiators is right here.
So is it because it like inhibits an enzyme or something, or?
I'm not sure. So it's called a potentiator, but I'm not 100% sure what that means. Let's see. Potentiating opiates. Okay, yeah. So they obliterate something called CYP3A4 in the digestive tract, which means that if you ingest grapefruit juice before taking opiates orally, it could increase the effects of the drug dramatically because much more of it will enter their bloodstream. It increases the absorption of opiates into the bloodstream and thus their potency as well. It'll enter your system much faster and do so with more power. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's wild.
And other things that can do it are Seville oranges, limes, and pomelos. Huh.
I wonder why they don't make that more publicly known.
Well, it's on a lot of those drugs. I've seen it on pill bottles or heard it from doctors and stuff before too, but it's definitely not that widely known.
Yeah, because I could see that being like a mistake that somebody just makes accidentally.
Oh, easy. Well, especially if you've been taking, low dose opiates for a while and like mixing it with a bit of alcohol, but then you get, mimosas for brunch and then suddenly you're in the hospital, right?
Right.
Like it's not a completely impossible situation.
Yeah, definitely not.
But yeah, discarded data, bad. Small samples, large variance, also bad.
I think the next section is pretty similar.
Yeah, it's pretty similar, and it's hard to do in audio.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is hilarious. But okay, I think we can definitely describe it. It's called graph manipulation, and in the book they show 3 different graphs that are the exact same from a data perspective. They're showing the exact same data, but they look completely different, and that's because the axes have been manipulated to look like that.
Yeah,
like the bottom part of the axis, like y-axis versus the top. So on one graph, it looks like a moderate increase of an already high number to a slightly higher number. On the second graph, it looks like it went from, low on the y-axis to fairly high on the y-axis, like probably a 33%, increase. And then on the other one, it goes from like 0 to like the sky.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's probably not a better way to share this.
Yeah. I mean, so you can understand in audio on the first graph, the y-axis is from 0 to 24.
Right.
And then in the second graph, they've chopped off everything below 18. So you're just seeing the 18 to 24 segment. And then in the third graph, they've taken the 20 to 22 segment and stretched it out to be as tall as the old 0 to 24 graph. So, they basically made it 10 times more zoomed in on the y-axis while keeping the x-axis exactly the same. So you've got basically 11 times the slope, it looks like, because of how little data you're taking compared to the original.
Right, exactly.
So that can make it look like quite a significant increase. And then they've got another one where they do the same thing. On one, you've got a graph with a y-axis of 0 to 30 million. And then in the other one, and on that one, it's showing a line that just kind of hovers around 20, and it says government payroll stayed stable. Right? It's a nice, flat line. But then they've got the same graph, but instead of 0 to 30 million, it's 19.5 to 20.5 million. And the graph like shoots up to the right. And they say government payroll's up. Right? So really, depending on how you frame the graph, it can make a huge difference in your perception of the changes.
And basically, you can use it to tell the story you want to tell.
Oh, yeah.
Or be manipulated to the story the author wants you to feel. But it's the exact same data. The data is not different.
Exact same data.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting section.
The other thing you have to look out for is when sometimes you'll see a chart with a logarithmic y-axis.
Oh, yeah.
And that's super deceptive, too. And those are the ones where it goes, 1, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000. And that, can make something look like a line when it should be a hyperbola, or make it look flat or flat-ish when it's actually going up fairly significantly. There's like a lot of weird stuff that you'll see people do sometimes, and that's even less helpful and more deceptive.
I'm surprised this kind of thing doesn't get called out more, because it seems fairly common, and maybe it gets called out, but
yeah, I mean, I feel like it does.
Yeah, people still do it,
right? And it's something that I would call out, but I'm just like shouting into the void on Twitter, right? There's going to be so many other people who don't see me or you or somebody else criticize it. They just see it and they go, oh yeah, payrolls went up. We got to drain the swamp. Pretty much.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The next one is the one I was starting to get into earlier, the semi-attached figure. And that's where you say one thing to imply another thing. So one example they give is that maybe you can't prove that your nostrum cures colds, but you can publish in large type a sworn laboratory report that half an ounce of this stuff killed 31,108 germs in a test tube in 11 seconds. So you make people believe that it will do something for them by giving them other data that seem relevant, right?
Exactly. And it's like, they never say how that relates to the cold.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't say it kills the cold virus.
And it doesn't say which germs.
Yeah.
Also, they didn't say what half an ounce of the stuff would do to you.
Yeah, I've actually got an article about this, or related to this, on my blog called Explained by Marketing, or Could That Be Explained by Marketing? And I just run through a whole bunch of these where it's basically like you can say one thing while suggesting another thing, or it's kind of like a tricky way to get you to believe something, or to kind of like sub in other data that feels relevant but isn't relevant.
Right.
I really like this next example too, about cigarettes.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, 27% of a large sample of eminent physicians smoke throaties. Or it's just like, oh, okay, doctors smoke this cigarette, so it must be a healthy cigarette, right? But your question should be, so what, right? Like, how many physicians smoke other cigarettes? What did you just look at certain physicians in like a city where a lot of people smoke throaties, right? Who cares that that's the cigarette physicians are smoking? Like, it's still unhealthy, right? There's all of these issues with that data.
Right. Well, I'm like, what if all the other physicians smoke something else? And that's like 73%.
Yeah, that too.
Right. It's like, yeah, 27% doesn't tell you anything.
No, not at all.
Also, they say a large sample. Also, eminent physicians. Notice how they put the eminent in there.
Yeah.
How do you define that?
How many of them were being paid by throaties to smoke their cigarettes?
Yep.
It's like, there's a lot of ways you can kind of mess with people's interpretations through these semi-attached figures.
Oh, like the clear weather versus foggy weather?
What's that one?
Oh, so if you go right below the cigarettes one?
Oh, yeah. More accidents occur in clear weather because there is more clear weather than foggy weather.
Right. So basically the point was like, somebody could write a clickbaity article. Now it would be a clickbaity article, but it would just be an attention-grabbing article at that time. That there's more accidents that occur in clear weather than foggy weather, right? And you'd be like, what? I'm going to click on that. And the author's point here is that there is just much more clear weather than foggy weather in the first place. So, of course, more accidents are going to happen in clear weather. And that could all be true. And fog can still be much more dangerous to drive in, even if there's more accidents in clear weather. So it's like just the fact there are more accidents in clear weather than foggy weather doesn't actually tell you anything.
Right.
You don't know, like, it's kind of like if I told you the stock A is $2 a share and stock B is $50 a share, you can't immediately conclude that stock B is more expensive than stock A.
That's a really common one. A lot of people think that you can compare two stocks based on their price, and that's just not true at all.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite ones.
That's one of the crazier things, right?
Yeah, but that's similar. It's very similar, though, to this.
It is very similar.
Because it doesn't give you enough information.
Yeah, not enough information at all. But this is what I was getting at earlier with the school shootings versus deployed military, right? It's like, okay, yeah, more people died in school shootings than died amongst deployed military members, but you're still way more likely to die in the military because there's significantly fewer deployed military personnel than there are school students.
Right.
Right. Like probably orders of magnitude fewer. And so, but it's easy to think that, oh, schools are just as dangerous as, being on the ground in wherever we're on the ground in now. And it's like, no, that's nowhere close to true.
Right.
But again, this semi-attached figure can easily make you feel that way.
A great way to make a good headline.
A great way to make a good headline. Or what are some of the other ones? These are the ones that I feel like I see a lot. There's, this is the one I was trying to remember, is accidents in the home. Right, so you hear like, 75% of all accidents happen in the home. Like, be careful around your house. It's like, no, that's just where you spend the most time. You're in the house most of the time. So that is where most of your accidents are going to happen.
Well, and I saw a stat similar to that from, this was like years ago when I first started driving, about how most accidents happen within 10 miles of your house.
Yeah. It's like, duh.
And I remember for years thinking that like, it must be like because I'm thinking that like I'm almost home, so I'm going to like lose focus and get distracted. Then like, if you think about it for even a little bit, it's like you probably drive more within 10 miles of your home than anywhere else.
Right.
So, it's just the same chances of getting into a car accident. It's just more likely because you're spending more time there.
Yeah.
It's a really common one.
Yeah. You see this one so much. Or what's another one? Or it's like when something says how many downloads it has or how many, satisfied customers or things like that. And it's like, well, it doesn't actually mean that the product or the app or whatever is good, right? Because you can get like a download farm in India to download your app 10,000 times for not that much money.
Right.
So it's like, that's not super useful. Or I also like this kind of tangential thing here that he mentions, which is that you can represent the same data in many different ways, where he says you can, for instance, express exactly the same fact by calling it a 1% return on sales, a 15% return on investment, a $10 million profit, an increase in profits of 40%, or a decrease of 60% from last year. Right? Those all sound very different, but they could be the exact same change.
Exactly. And those are the exact same numbers. They sound completely different.
Yeah, exact same number conveyed entirely differently.
Yeah, and that's some of the games too that like companies will play a lot.
Yeah.
Just depends on like what message they're trying to get across.
Yeah, especially to investors or, on a landing page or things like that.
Right.
You see it in marketing all the time. All right, should we hop to the next one here?
Yeah, this is probably the one that everyone has heard before, but
yeah, everyone will have the most familiarity with this one.
Yeah, correlation versus causation. So, let's see, what was the best example from this one? There was the smoking and low grades one.
Right. So does smoking cause low grades? Do low grades cause smoking? Is it something else causing both of them? Right. We don't know, but it's easy to infer something without actually knowing.
It's easy to infer like, oh, don't smoke because your grades will go down, right? It's easy to say that.
Yeah.
But like that might not be the causation at all. It might be the exact opposite.
This was the big problem with the red meat stuff too.
Yeah.
Was that all of those studies were correlative, longitudinal studies that didn't control for like any dietary or lifestyle factors. And so they were looking at people who were, eating McDonald's basically and were super overweight and weren't exercising at all. And they said, look, these people ate meat and then they, died younger and got heart disease. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, like, look at who you were studying. So.
Exactly. I mean, and there's ways to, I feel like there's a lot of studies with this, but then of course, every time I say study, I like also start questioning it in my own head.
Yeah.
When I'm like trying to pull up a study that like negates it. But I saw this one thing about beer bellies, right? So it was like, oh, is there anything special about the beer belly versus like just gaining weight, right? Or drinking other types of drinking. And the conclusion, at least from that study, was that it was much more about all the things that go along with drinking beer. So like pub food, right? And the fact you're probably likely, like you think about if you're like a wine bar versus like a beer bar, and the kinds of things you're likely to be snacking on. Like wine, you might be just eating like cheese, but beer, you might be eating like, I don't know, just something like much more heavy and fatty with it.
Nachos, wings.
Yeah, that's like the stuff that goes along with beer. So at least that study was saying is much more about like the things that go around it. But it would be very easy to say, oh, don't drink beer because you're going to get a beer belly. And, that's not necessarily what the causation, like that's not necessarily the direction of the causation.
Yeah. Or there's at least another step involved.
Exactly. Like it's probably still not even that simple. I'm sure there's like, there's something with the carbs in beer versus like if you drink liquor would not have the same like tequila or something, right? Wouldn't have the gluten, or there's all these like second order things too, right? Of like what gluten would do to some people.
There's a lot of estrogen in beer too, right?
Yeah, the hoppier styles.
The hoppier styles, yeah.
Although phytoestrogens are it's phytoestrogens that are in beer, but the phytoestrogens in general are a really interesting thing if you dive into it. Because I know that was one thing where I realized I have a crony belief on, or I would just like anything that had phytoestrogens, I'd be like, oh, I need to avoid that. Mm-hmm. It's like what you'd expect, right? When you hear the word estrogen and you're a man, you'd probably be like, oh, I want to stay away from that.
Yeah.
But if you actually like I'll send you a couple of the papers that I found that were kind of interesting on that. So phytoestrogen doesn't necessarily mean it mimics estrogen or it is estrogen.
Okay.
It can have an opposite effect as well, but there are different types of phytoestrogen is a category, not a actual compound. Like it's not one thing. So there's like different effects that different phytoestrogens have. So one thing that like is not a misconception is soy.
Right.
So soy, the type of phytoestrogen that's in soy, which I forget exactly what that's called. I'll try to find it. But that acts like estrogen. So that one's not a bad assumption to be making. But then there are others, and I never looked up like what the beer one was, but there are other types of phytoestrogens that either have no effect or even like negate estrogen in your body. Like they bind to it or something.
Interesting.
Yeah, so there's like all sorts of weird, like not weird, but just different types of phytoestrogens.
Yeah, you have to send me those papers. I'm curious.
Yeah, gonna make a note to do that. But yeah, what were we talking about? We were talking about correlation versus causation.
Correlation versus causation.
What was another one? There was the college one, which came up in Elephant in the Brain also.
Yeah, right. It's like, well, yeah, pretty much everyone goes to college. So saying college makes you successful is pretty ridiculous. And there's this is the hard thing with correlation versus causation, is that a lot of the time there's no like counter study that's ever run.
Right.
And so they just say like, well, we will, we can look at all the successful people and, people making more money, and hey, most of them went to college. And it's like, well, it could just as easily be that people whose parents made more money are more likely to go to college, and they're also more likely to make more money because they their parents had more money, and college is just like a route along the way. We're not doing a lot of the other studies on, or we're not seeing the alternative histories, right, where they didn't go to college.
Right. And that's the problem with a lot of these things is there's no way to like rewind the tape and say like, how would it have gone if, so-and-so had not gone to college, or all these people who went to college didn't go to college, and let's see what the difference would have been.
Yeah. Well, luckily we're starting to run more of those tests now, and it feels like it's coming back fairly bad for college.
Yeah. Which is not surprising, I feel like, for people who've gone to college.
Yeah. Well, and it's also worth clarifying too that I don't think college is inherently bad in and of itself, but it is bad as a $200,000 investment.
Yeah.
Even as a $50,000 or $100,000 investment, right? It's definitely not worth that.
That's true. It's probably much more about the size of the investment, right? If it costs nothing.
If it costs nothing, then it would probably be worth doing, right?
Right.
But, did I get $200,000 worth of value from Carnegie Mellon? Like, no, probably not even 10% of that.
Right.
Especially when you consider the amount of time you spend on it too.
Well, exactly. The opportunity cost when you start factoring that in.
The opportunity cost. Yeah. It's incredible.
Right. Because it's not just the expense. It's also the time you could have been making money.
Exactly.
Kanye's album, College Dropout, has it best in there.
Yeah.
It's like, don't forget about that drug habit you picked up being around all your peers.
Be the secretary's secretary.
Good episode if you haven't heard it already.
Yeah, check it out if you haven't listened to it yet. But I suppose we should wrap up with how to talk back to a statistic. So these are the 5 questions you should ask anytime you hear a stat to help you hopefully get closer to the truth of the matter. So the first question is, who says so? And so what he says about this is that the first thing you should look for is bias. The laboratory with something to prove for the sake of a theory, a reputation, or a fee. The newspaper whose aim is a good story. Labor or management with a wage level at stake. Right? So who's telling you the statistic, and what is their skin in the game? What do they want to be true?
Exactly. Also, before we even get into all of that, I feel like this entire section, I just love that he put it in here.
Yeah. It's so useful.
Yeah, exactly. This is, I feel like, the part that if you internalize, it helps a lot, which I need to do.
Exactly. I mean, they're just great questions to have at the back of your head. And I was hanging out with Taylor Pearson, and he pulled one of these out because I was mentioning, have you heard the statistic that like somewhere around 10% of people's fathers aren't who they think it is in the US?
I've heard the stat, yeah, but I haven't looked into it at all.
Yeah, so I mentioned that once in passing conversation with Taylor, and he was like, yeah, but how do they know that? Right?
That's a good question.
And that's straight out of the book. And I was like, fuck, I should have thought of that.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, how do you get that data exactly? Do you go around asking people? Do you like genetically test everyone? It's kind of hard to say.
You know what's really fascinating is as you dig more into this stuff, you realize how many things are just small sample sizes and then that have just been extrapolated out.
Yeah.
Like assuming you have a perfect sample.
Right. Well, and there's this other issue with a lot of these studies and stuff too. I mean, most psych studies are done on like hungover college students.
Right.
They're not done on demonstrative populations of, American diversity. They're done on 30 like probably white, Asian, or Indian students who are studying psych or humanities and are required to do 10 hours of like lab experiment question answering to pass the class. And I know, because I was one of those people, you don't really give a fuck about like what you're saying. You just show up, like usually hungover or something, and you just like check off boxes and whatever, and then you go home. Like, you're not taking it seriously. You're not representing the population at large. It's kind of nonsense data. And there's this acronym, weird. I think it's weird. Let me see. Weird. In science research, it's like white, Eastern, industrialized. Here it is. Or no, not white, Western educated from industrialized countries, rich and democratic countries. So yeah, they're Western and educated, and they're from industrialized, rich and democratic countries. So that's the sample size that you're getting in almost all of these research studies. And that's definitely not going to be representative of humanity at large.
I wonder if that's why so many, or at least a contributing factor for why so many of them can't be repeated.
Yeah, that's got to be a big part of it.
Yeah.
They're just looking at a small group of college kids, and it's not enough.
Right. And I wonder if like different types of schools too have different types of like results with things like that. Like I'd imagine, Harvard's student body would be very different than like, I don't know, Montana State or something.
Yeah.
Right. So in particular for something like psychology.
Definitely.
Just so like upbringing dependent.
Well, and also, I mean, the type of people who study psych are going to have very different answers from the people who study like engineering, right? Or
that's true too.
Architecture. So there's even issues within the micro sample, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, let alone like a construction worker or like a soldier or something,
or a Maasai tribes person from Africa, right? Like,
yeah,
you can. There's whole layers of differences between people that don't get explored in most of this research.
Right. Or even like if you're from a capitalist society versus a communist society versus a tribal society. Yeah, it's just like all of your basic assumptions would be different.
Yeah, very true. So that was the first one. Who says so? The second one is the one I just mentioned from Taylor. How does he know? So watch out for evidence of a biased sample, one that's been selected improperly or has selected itself. Ask the question we dealt with in an early chapter. Is the sample large enough to permit any reliable conclusion? All right, so how do they actually know what they're saying? Right? What were their methods? What are they basing it on? Does it even make sense that they could know this? Which is actually another one of them. This doesn't make sense, which is honestly the most useful one, right? Because sometimes you'll hear a statistic and you'll just be like, it doesn't make sense that would be true, right?
Yeah, there was an example he gave in the book, which was around cancer diagnosis, right?
I don't remember that. What was it?
It was one where I think the rate of cancer diagnosis went up like some ridiculous amount from this year to like X year to Y year. And the point he brought up was it's not that the rate of cancer increased that much. It's that the diagnostic tools were that much better.
Yeah.
Right. But like the conclusion, the article he was calling out was trying to draw was like cancer has gone up so much in the past 10 years. But really that was probably way less of the explanation and much more was just the diagnostics.
It's a mix of improving screening and people living long enough to get cancer.
Right. Exactly.
Well, there's actually a flip side to that too, which is that people will say that we've significantly improved cancer survival rates, but that's based on 5-year survival rates. And we've started detecting cancer a lot earlier. And so survival hasn't actually gone up that much for a lot of cancers. We just detect it early enough so that you get through the 5-year window and then you die.
Right.
But
which might actually be the same. It's not the medicine might not have done anything.
Exactly. It's probably the same age you would have died at anyway. The medicine didn't have to improve at all. We just caught it earlier. But in the statistics, it looks like survivability has gone up.
Right. Yeah, that's why like a lot of the medical stats are just gamed also beyond belief.
Pretty fishy.
Yeah.
The next one is what's missing. So, yeah, this is where the cancer one comes in, right?
Ah, yes. Okay, yep.
So, a report of a great increase in deaths from cancer in the last quarter century is misleading unless you know how much of it is a product of such extraneous factors as these. Cancer is often listed now where causes unknown was formerly used. Autopsies are more frequent, giving surer diagnoses. Reporting and compiling of medical statistics are more complete, and people more frequently reach the most susceptible ages now. And if you are looking at total deaths rather than the death rate, don't neglect the fact that there are more people now than there used to be.
Right.
All right. That's the other really big one. Cancers might have gone up 20%, but if the total number of people went up 50%, then that's actually a good thing.
Then we're doing well. Yeah.
Then we're doing well.
The Johns Hopkins example earlier was also really good.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to read this from the book. Sometimes it is percentages that are given and raw figures that are missing, and this can be deceptive too. Long ago, when Johns Hopkins University had just begun to admit women students, someone not particularly enamored of co-education reported a real shocker. 33 1/3% of the women at Hopkins had married faculty members. The raw figures gave a clearer picture. There were 3 women enrolled at the time, and one of them had married a faculty man.
Yep. The example I always like to give of this is that sometimes I'll talk to a startup or a site and they'll be like, yeah, we're growing 10% month over month. And I'm like, all right, but did you go from 100 to 110 visitors, or did you go from, 100,000 to 110,000, right? Raw percentages can be misleading fairly frequently.
Right.
Because if they're taking a super small base rate for the percentage, then you haven't really been told anything.
Exactly.
Well, base rate arguments in general are kind of interesting, where it's like, what's the one? I mean, in general, some of the diversity stuff, right, where it's like, we should have an equal balance of like representation for everyone. And it's like, well, you have to ask, what's the base rate that we're doing that off of, right?
Right.
Not just at the population level, but also at the like applicant and interested level.
Right. Well, that's where it gets to some of the gender stuff too, with like computer science or something.
Right. I saw something the other day. It was this big thing going around Twitter that was like, it said something like women are more than 50% of the people in the US, so they should be more than 50% of the elected representatives, which is not like a bad idea in and of itself, but it would be an issue if there were significantly like fewer women than men who wanted to do it, right?
Yeah.
Because then it would be like, well, how do you balance it, right?
Right.
And what if there are 51% women senators and then another woman wants to run? Do you tell her like you can't be a senator, right? Like,
right.
Is there a limit to this rule? I don't know. So the what's missing base rate thing is like a fairly common one.
Yeah.
So people will argue for something or say something as a statistic or whatnot without talking about whatever the related base rates are. It's the same thing with the cancer one, all right?
Exactly. I mean, I got into similar to your elected representative thing. I got into a discussion with one of my friends who's this summer he was interning at one of the like large Wall Street banks, and an observation he made was that there were more women than men in his intern class. But then if you look at like leadership in the bank, it was almost entirely male. And there were like a few women, but not anywhere close to the percentage that were there for his intern class. And even like the more entry level employees were, it skewed more 50-50 in that sense. And then as people got more senior, it was more and more male. And, I brought up, I was like, I'll be honest, like I have no interest in working a 100-hour week at a bank, right? And I'm sure there are a ton of people, men and women, who don't want to, but there might skew female of people who don't want to do that type of crazy job.
Yeah.
And that could account for it. It doesn't mean it's like, yeah, I'm not saying like no banks are sexist, right? But like there probably is less sexism and more just lack of like a lot of people who are just not interested in that shitty job.
You don't even have to go that far. I think at the very least you can say it's not 100% discrimination, right?
Yeah.
It's like there can definitely be some discrimination, but that doesn't mean that some discrimination means all differences are discrimination.
I think that's the best way to say it.
Yeah, that's like the Foucault discipline and punish argument, right? Is that as soon as you create any dichotomy, you necessarily create oppression, right? And that's kind of problematic because if you create it in one direction, you're going to create it in the other direction too, right? Where it's like as soon as you start saying that you have to have a perfect balance of everything, then it necessarily becomes discriminatory the other way, right? So it's like, how do you balance that? And that's actually a good question, right? Like I have no idea what the answer is, because the whole perfectly balanced arguments are kind of lazy, I think. We talk about this problem a lot.
Yeah, I know. And it's tough to have like a right answer on it.
Yeah, it is really tough.
Because it's like on one hand, there are definitely issues on, what people are saying around discrimination, whether it's racial or gender, like that. It's not that doesn't exist at all, right? But then there are like, you can also take it too far the other way, where if you're setting like quotas, and like your representative example was perfect. It's kind of like, I mean, it creates a whole new set of problems. It doesn't really solve everything. Like maybe there's just no utopia. Maybe that's the answer. Yeah. There's no perfect answer.
There's no perfect answer.
All right. Should we move to the next one?
Next one is, did somebody change the subject?
I love this.
Yeah. Is it a real statistic, or is it, based on some random reporting, right? So if you do a survey asking people how often do they bathe, they are probably not going to give you a completely honest answer. They're going to, be like, oh yeah, I shower like twice a day, right? When really it might be once every day or two.
Right.
The China example's hilarious.
I love this one.
Yeah, I'll read from the book. The population of a large area in China was 28 million. 5 years later, it was 105 million. Very little of that increase was real. The great difference could be explained only by taking into account the purposes of the two enumerations and the way people would be inclined to feel about being counted in each instance. The first census was for tax and military purposes. The second was for famine relief. So You got to know how the data was collected, and especially think about what incentives there could have been to misrepresent the data as it's being collected.
Oh yeah, like tax and military. Obviously, you want to. Well, more people would want to not be counted. Whereas famine relief, everybody would want to be counted, perhaps even more than once.
Count your dead relatives. Count everyone.
Yep.
And then the last one is the one we already touched on, which is, does it make sense, right? If you hear a stat and you go like, that doesn't, like, I don't totally buy that, then that's usually a pretty good sign that you should at least be skeptical. I feel like, especially if you listen to this show and read books like this, you have a decent intuitive sense of what may or may not be bullshit. And so, when you hear something, you can kind of go like, I'm not sure I buy that.
Exactly. Well, yeah, and if it's too incredible, there's a chance it's real, but you should look into it.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt to research it. It's like we were talking about earlier in the show, right? We've got these magical, pocket devices where we can fact check anything someone throws out now pretty quickly. We do it live on the show sometimes.
Right.
So,
and even more often in the bonus material.
It's true. We were just researching Sphinx conspiracy theories for like 20 minutes. It was great. You should check it out.
Yeah. But we also say more outlandish things on the bonus material, which you'll only know if you subscribe.
That's true. Yeah.
So
that's where we say all of our really just like vile, terrible shit that we can't put on the public radio.
Exactly.
NPR will cut our funding if we say the really bad stuff here. So you've got to join through the Patreon if you want to get access to it.
Yep. Join for all the bad stuff.
All the bad stuff. Yeah.
But no, I think so. That's kind of how the book wraps up. But I would say, this is a book I'd recommend everyone to, have on hand. Like, it's just a really good little pocket guide, as you said at the beginning.
And it's a quick read, and it's a really fun read, too. It's like laugh out loud funny at parts.
It's not a textbook.
Yeah, it's not a textbook. It's very entertainingly written, very quick, super useful. There's no fluff. It's a great little book.
Yeah, it took it did not take very much time to finish, but I definitely remember laughing a few different times when reading it. Yeah, it's just a very good book and quick. And I think it's one of those books that you probably will internalize a lot of these, but it's nice to have it on hand. And I'm sure both of us will revisit these rules as we hear outlandish statistics all the time.
Oh, yeah. It's a good book to like keep in your periphery, to like have in your living room or in your office where you can see it and get reminded like, oh, yeah, I'm probably being lied to today.
Right.
So I think that's a good kind of outlook to have, especially in this day and age where there's just random statistics being thrown around everywhere for everything.
Yeah, like, did you know 47% of all statistics are fake?
Yeah, I've heard that.
No, but yeah, you're totally right. In this day and age, especially because it's so easy, one, to make something up, and two, to shout about it on the internet.
Yep.
Yeah, having something like this on hand is very helpful. And it's also, I can see these techniques being useful to like bring an argument back down to earth, where if you have like, I don't know, two friends or somebody who you're talking to getting really worked up about a stat, and then you can just be like, well, like, let's dig into that a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll piss them off more, but you'll probably, maybe help them see, or maybe just diffuse the situation a little bit by diving into what's actually behind numbers. Sometimes people don't want to hear that, though, so it could go either way.
I was going to say, it depends on the friend. Some people will not like that at all.
Yeah. Although I don't know if I like, it's hard for me to say I wouldn't be like friends with them if they reacted badly to it, but there's like, I don't know, a certain openness you would kind of have to have one of these discussions, right? I can see them.
That's true.
Yeah, I could see somebody reacting very badly also if you call out their source.
Well, there's another version of it that I invoke every now and then that people don't like that much, but where somebody will say something like, oh, that person is, always late, or, oh, this company is like so terrible to its customers, or, oh, these products don't work. And then I'll say, because they'll have talked about something related to it before, and they'll be like, do you have more than 2 examples? Right. And usually when people are saying that stuff, they've got like 2 close together examples of something happening. And so then they just extrapolate it into a rule. And I find that, at least for me, that's a useful way to check my own tendencies to, overinflate very small data sets.
That's a great point. I feel like if you like doing that, because most people probably do that, right? I would imagine it's probably the vast majority of people. That might be like the art of like how to lose friends. If you just, because like people throw that around all the time, like, oh, so-and-so is always doing this. And, but yeah, you're probably right. There's like 2 examples that they're then extrapolating to always. That's hilarious. I'm gonna try that to somebody.
Yeah. Not a great way to make friends at dinner parties, but it is entertaining.
You've shared a lot of tactics on how to make dinner parties uncomfortable.
That's my favorite thing, you know? That was my latest blog post, social disobedience.
Yeah, good blog post. Liked it.
Thank you. Well, I appreciated your editing help.
Yeah, no, I mean, I didn't change very much. I just gave a couple examples in there.
Just got to make people uncomfortable at parties.
How obviously this is going to be aired like a month after, but is that getting some views and some comments on it?
Well, I don't allow comments on my blog, so
no. I mean, I think on Medium, you post on Medium.
Yeah, I think it got some comments on Medium, but I don't read those because there's a lot of stupid people on Medium.
Yeah, I was just curious what people, because it like there was nothing in your article that I would say would be like offensive besides that you're going after like the holy grail of political correctness.
Yeah, but we'll see.
So, but you broke it down in like a very civil way.
People will find a way to be offended,
right?
You know, I know there's at least one Medium comment on it, so let's go look. We'll do a live.
Do a live check.
Maybe a mean tweet type situation. I really want to be. I want to be famous enough that we get mean tweets.
Oh, that'd be great.
That would just make me really happy.
People send us mean tweets. We'll feel good about ourselves.
Exactly. Wow, it's got 160 claps on Medium already. That's nice.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it some claps.
Thanks, dude.
Oh, wait, I gotta sign in. I'll do it after.
Wow, dude, it's got 5 responses. All right, let's see. Okay, nice article. I think it's inherently arrogant to assert that one has a responsibility to unfragilize the minds of others. This undermines your argument as it denotes another form of intolerance that is not based on articulating one's view for the purpose of adding value to a discussion. Rather, it is based on articulating one's view for the purpose of correcting a perceived flaw in the thought process of another person, and is thus intellectually dishonest. Most people can smell that a mile away and respond accordingly. Make a genuine effort to understand the views of others, and I don't think she's disagreeing with me. I think it's just...
No, I think it's just a different way of saying it. The second one was really nice. Like, pretty much just backing you up.
Yeah.
Some of these comments are like mini articles in themselves. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. That is the one nice thing about Medium, is that people will write fairly long responses.
Yeah.
I like this guy Roy Cook, who basically says that be careful or else you'll get killed like Socrates. That's a good analogy.
He's not wrong. Like, people don't like it.
People don't like it. All right, we should wrap up.
Yep.
So, How to Lie with Statistics by Darrell Huff. Check it out. Highly recommend it. We'll be doing a couple more very interesting books coming up, and we're excited for those. If you want to know everything that's coming up on the show, you get access to that at the Patreon at patreon.com/madeyouthink. Most importantly, you also get our detailed book notes that we use to prepare for each show. And even more importantly, you get all of the really fun bonus material, which is usually another like 10 to 20 some minutes per episode that we record before the show.
We've been going 20 lately.
Today was like 25. It was a long one. It was great.
Yeah. Yeah. So you get like a mini episode. You get a whole nother mini episode per episode. And that's at the $5 tier, right?
Exactly. That's the $5 tier. We also do monthly hangouts now. And so we just did our last one earlier this week. It was super fun. I wish more of you could have been there, but you know, you weren't on the Patreon yet. So if you want to make sure you make it to the next one, then you should sign up, because the next one is going to be like mid-September. I think September 15th or so, we said. I want to say 15th, 13th. And this should be coming out a bit before that.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah, so if you want to make sure that you can join for the next hangout, and I will mention that for the last one, we actually just brought everyone on live. You know, it wasn't just Neil and I talking and everyone else typing. It was a close enough group that we could all just hang out and chat. We won't be able to do that for too much longer. So if you want to, come hang out and chat and support the show, then you should definitely go over to patreon.com/madeyouthink. Check it out. Sign up. We're doing this because we don't like ads. We always skip the ads. We don't want to feel like we need to subvert our honest, unfiltered viewpoints to the whims of our corporate overlords. So we're going with the crowdfunded method, and we're liking it so far.
Yeah, definitely
check it out.
And I know we mentioned a bunch of links on this episode as well. So if you want access to those, you go to madeyouthinkpodcast.com to the show notes page for this episode. And a lot of these links will be on there, as well as the wonderful detailed notes we always have about the episode. But if you want our full notes, you got to go to Patreon.
Yeah.
Let's see. Anything else? Oh, if you want another way to support the podcast, if you go to madeyouthinkpodcast.com/support, we have some of our wonderful partners there. And check that out.
Check that out. And then the most helpful thing you can do, as always, is to tell your friends about the show. So, tell them in person. If you've got a blog or Twitter or Instagram or Pornhub profile and you want to blog about us on any of those, then we obviously appreciate it. And leave a review on iTunes.
I really hope somebody shouts us out on Pornhub. That'd be pretty cool if that's our top referring link.
That'd be great. Yeah, it's just somebody it's somebody like jacking off and listening to us in the background. That's just 2 hours of that. It's the Jordan Peterson episode.
Oh man.
Hey, a download's a download, Those are high ARPU users, Average revenue per user for like porn and gaming, two of the highest industries.
Exactly. I was gonna say Pornhub's probably one of the most popular websites in the world, so
I think it is. I wonder what their Alexa rating is, or Alexa ranking.
Let's check.
Yeah, we're in the goof off part of the episode, so if anybody has like important things to do, feel free to go to the Patreon and sign up, and then you're welcome to boogie.
I have heard though that from some people, but granted, this is definitely a biased audience because it's people who we're actually friends with. They love our outros.
Oh yeah. Well, that was always our goal, was to make the outros as entertaining as the original episodes. So I googled Alexa Pornhub and I just got a bunch of porn stars named Alexa. So here we go. Alexa top 500. I assume Pornhub would be the most popular porn site.
Yeah, unless there's like one in China or something.
Yeah, there could be like a Chinese one.
Oh, Pornhub's 27.
Okay, I believe that.
It's right below Netflix.
I love that.
Although the daily time on site is significantly higher than Netflix.
Really?
It's 835 versus 157.
Wow. Yeah, and average page views is quite a bit higher too.
Wait, how is that possible? Like, how much are people using Pornhub?
I don't know, man.
835 versus 157? Like, you would think Netflix, right? You're watching a show.
Yeah. Who's only spending like 2 minutes on Netflix?
Okay, you know what? We're messing up with our statistics here. There's probably some, like, average time on site is probably the mean, right?
I've got a theory. I've got a good theory.
Okay.
Which is that people go to Netflix, they browse, and then they leave. They're like, I don't really want to watch TV. I'm going to go back to Instagram or something, right?
Yeah.
But nobody goes to Pornhub to not actually watch porn, right? Like, nobody goes and browses for a minute and then leaves.
Yeah. And so I was like, you know what? I don't feel like doing this.
It's like, I don't really want to get off anymore. Like, I'm going to go for a run.
That's a really good point.
Right? Like, that definitely is not happening. So,
Reddit's time on site is insane. 1312.
Dude, X Videos, which is another porn site, is 15 minutes.
Where's X Videos?
44.
Oh, wow. 10.81 page views.
Jeez. It's like not even close. There's no other site that is above 10. I don't see a single other one. Well, Reddit's 13 and VK.
Twitter is so short. Twitter's 36 seconds.
Yeah, I believe that though.
Yeah.
So you hop on, you quickly get your update and you leave.
I was going to say I was expecting like Pornhub to have a smaller number because of that.
It's 7 minutes of searching and then a minute and 35 of watching.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they end up on my site afterwards.
Then they end up on your site. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Then they end up on your app. So it's a good cycle.
It's the whole sales funnel.
I'm surprised Twitch is only 540. That's a surprising one.
Yeah. I don't know. There could be some browsing thing there too.
eBay must be fucking addictive for the people who use it. 922.
Yeah, it's long.
It's a lot.
All right.
Dang, this is fun. All right. We will wrap up. For those of you who are still listening to us going through Alexa, we appreciate you.
Check out the Patreon. Tell your friends. iTunes reviews. Hit us up on Twitter. I'm at Nat Eliason.
I'm at the Real Neil S.
Yep. And we'll see you all next week.
See you guys next time.